Good morning. It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. It is our Wayne Chronicles. This is my time to go off script, to say what's on my mind, to discuss what's been happening. If you are looking for one of my more reserved shows, check out Dean Talk, check out my podcast from the Desk of the Dean. You can find those across social media, across the internet. This is not that show. This is a show where I really discuss what I want to discuss. And if you really want to be involved, make sure you sign up for my YouTube channel and subscribe. That's Dr. Woodson 2020. This show only goes live on my YouTube. It does not go live on my Facebook or any other method. So if you really want to be involved, make sure you go to my YouTube. If you're on Instagram, we're doing Instagram. It was great last week, Instagram. I got a lot of positive feedback. Thank you all. Hey, Dr. Kennedy. Thank you all for participating. I am excited about the way that my brand and what I do is expanding. So, it's always good. So thank you, everyone, for all of your support. I do want to make everyone aware of one thing. I have the Woodson Foundation, which helps students across the country. We are doing two things this year that's special for our seniors. Most of our seniors have not had a traditional senior year. There's a lot of excitement that happens during senior year. You get to spend that final few months with, people you've been in school with for years. Well, of course, COVID-19 stopped that from happening. Many of our students still are not on campus. And so it's been the non-traditional senior year. And so what we're doing two things. First, we are doing student profiles. So if you know a senior anywhere in the country, hey, Dr. Tony, Matt, if you know a senior at any HBCU across the country and you would like us to profile them, send their information, name, major, hometown, and any specific details you want to know about them, and a photo, and we are going to promote those students on our social media platforms across the country. We're doing that. The second thing is we are preparing senior boxes. We're trying to do at least 50. Each box is $30, and we are asking people to help by donating for us to do those boxes. They are going to be special gifts for our HBCU seniors across the country. Our minimum is 50. If we do more, that's great. And we want to build on that every year just to tell our students, thank you. Thank you for sticking with our HBCUs in the pandemic where you were not on campus and not getting a lot of the services. Hey, Chris. And so we want to still honor them and, congratulate them on what is still one of the major milestones. If you would like to donate, you can go to the woodsonfoundation.org, click on the support page, and do a donation. Like I said, every box is $30. We are trying to get at least 50. You all can do the math. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited just about being able to honor our seniors. I remember what that year meant for me many, many years ago. And so we want to help and do the same for these young people who are finishing now. So you all know I start this show a little different. I start with my special topics. So today we're going to, of course, start with the Derek Chauvin convictions yesterday. I was both surprised and emotional. I honestly did not think he was going to be convicted because we have seen this scenario over and over and over again. All this overwhelming evidence, and then some BS technicality gets the person off. And then here we are repeating this same cycle over and over again. So honestly, I was very surprised that he was convicted. And more so, I was surprised he was convicted on all three counts. So something is happening in this country, and I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, gives us a little hope that we might possibly, in some small way, be moving in the right direction. However, during the trial, we lost Dante Wright, who was killed by a police officer 10 minutes from the courthouse where the George Floyd trial was going on by an officer who, quote unquote, mistook her taser for her weapon. Now, I've never been a police officer, but to find out that she was a trainer, how can you make that kind of mistake? That's not logical. That makes absolutely no sense. But this is what's happened. They give these ridiculous explanations or excuses. And, those of us who are Black know that, two excuses are, well, there's a whole quote and we won't go into that right now, but just crap. Then, so that was during the trial. Then 20 minutes before the verdict, Ma'Khia Bryant was killed in front of her home by an officer in Columbus, Ohio, and she was apparently the one who called the police. This is getting ridiculous. And, I was doing some research. You all know I'm a researcher. And, there's a news outlet that says since testimony began for the George Floyd trial on March 29th, at least 64 people have died at the hands of law enforcement nationwide, with Black and Latino people representing more than half of those dead. As of Saturday, the average was more than 3 killings a day. So this takes me to the point of today's special topic. What are we going to do about it? We have these movements, we have these whatever, everybody gets all enamored. We had all this focus on George Floyd. Well, that trial is over now. We had the issue with Breonna Taylor. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, and we seem to just keep having all these movements and marches and all of this. And then we're having the same movement and march over. So my question to people who want to have this discussion with me is always, what's the plan? What are we going to do to change some of this stuff? What are we doing individually? What are we doing in our communities? What are we doing across the country? That's critical. Or we're going to keep repeating this cycle, because the reality is, and I think someone said, Steve Harvey said, or some other celebrity, that none of this is new. No, it was Will Smith. None of this is new. The only thing that's new is that it's being videoed and the general masses can see it. But if you have studied anything about Black history, this has been happening since we were stolen and brought over on ships, this same type of behavior. And we're talking hundreds of years and we're still doing the same thing. So I think, although people had issues with Maxine Waters' statements, I think she has a point. It's time for us to make some kind of important movement to start changing this. If not, we're going to have these same discussions and we're going to have these same marches over and over again. It's like every 40 years we're going to do something. But, it's time out for that. I like the fact that some of my, I like and I'm insulted. There's some of my mentees wear those shirts that say, I am not my ancestors, or I'm not my grandparents, or that there is a different time. And what I'm afraid of in reality is that we are moving towards another Civil War type of situation, especially now that it's not just affecting Black people. That being said, someone asked me the other day, when we have these deaths, where are the Asian people? Now, when there was those Asian killings, the Black community got up in arms and they were supportive and all, but is that reciprocated? And I'm just going to leave that point right there. I'm not even going to go into it, but just think on that. Well, today's topic is building and managing relationships. I have been talking to a lot of people over the last week about relationships, and not just personal relationships, but professional relationships as well. Yes, Dr. Hodges, that's right. All this has to involve police education, training, and impulse reaction. I fully agree, because you're in a situation where you can mistake your handgun for a taser. Definitely some training is needed. So let's talk about these relationships. I'm going to broadly talk about relationships. Then I'm going to talk about some specific types of relationships. You all know this is my weekly morning. I can say what I want to say. And I am glad that the numbers are going up, 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 up. So I'm appreciative of that. So when we think about relationships, most of us think about our intimate relationship with, whether we call them our significant other, our domestic partner, our husband, our wife, our better half, whatever it is. That is what we think of mostly when we think about relationships. But there are relationships across the board. There are friendships. There are professional relationships. There are familial relationships. All of them are critical to your balance and your mental stability. But if you are noticing a challenge on your behalf in one of those relationships, more than likely the same challenge is happening across the board. Perfect example. Yes, we can't keep placing the responsibility on the victims. I agree. I was speaking to someone this week who always does whatever to help people, even if it's not in their best interest. And I told him, I said, you are an enabler. And I mean, we had this it really got into like this lovely debate. Anybody knows I like a good debate. But I said, even at your own detriment, you are trying to help this person who is not trying to help themselves. So that goes to my point that, if you are in relationships, usually those traits go across the board. I have seen that trait with him in his personal relationships, in his intimate relationships, with family, with friends, always going over and above to support, but not getting that in return. That's an unhealthy relationship. When you are building new relationships of any type with any person, you at those initial stages are teaching that person how to respond and react to you. And I say to people all the time, if you're dating somebody, it's very easy for them to put on the fake person for 3 to 6 months. But about that 7th or 8th month, you are really going to realize who you have there in front of you, good or bad. Most people can fake it for 3 to 6 months. But after that, it's very hard for that real person not to start, quote unquote, shining through. But you are teaching people how, and if it's a love relationship, how to love you. If it's a business relationship, how to respond to you. If it's any other relationship, how to interact, how to initiate instances with you. And so some of that responsibility is on us. The other responsibility is when people are toxic and they're toxic and you continue to interact with them more than you have to, that's on you. And I will say that because, sometimes we have toxic people that we work with and we have no control over in a way that we can just devoid ourselves of that person. I think all of us have been in situations where we've had to deal with that kind of crap. But in those situations, you're kind of stuck with the person. But that doesn't mean that you have to do extra stuff. Go to the meetings or do the work and do the bare minimum, but don't force interactions with that person. If you see that person in situations that you don't have to be involved in, don't even go in there. We always say in personal relationships that there are all these red flags. Yeah, well, there are red flags, and many times we ignore them. Or, what I used to do is be like, well, it won't be that bad, and, after we get through this, it'll be better. And it rarely ever gets better. For someone to change, they have to want to change. You can't want it for them more than they do. There used to be this concept where, and I have sisters that, you'll find the perfect man and then you can fix them. Well, you can't fix somebody who's grown. Now, they might grow and develop and enhance and change, but that is on them. That is not something that you can create. So when you're building these relationships, make sure that you are clear and communicating. Lack of communication is a major issue in many relationships. And I'm not just talking about there's been some horrible thing and you're about to have a fight and you don't want to fight. That's not always the case. But there are small things that can be discussed. For instance, I don't like cabinets to be left open. Like that really vexes me. Now, to some people, that's whatever. I'm OCD, and that just drives me nuts. I don't like cabinets to be left open. And I also do not like doorbells. If you ever come to my house, the doorbell has been disconnected since the day I moved in. That was the first thing I had people do was disconnect the doorbell. I don't like doorbells. But there are reasons for that. And if I'm, dating someone or whatever, I would share those issues with that person so they understood. But you have to communicate. Even in work situations, if you see something's not being done well, or if there's a better process or method of doing something, try to talk to someone and get that process adjusted. But it also is clear based on how you approach people. I have always had open door policy with my staff everywhere I've worked. But what you can't come in and do it is holler and scream. Because at that point, my personality shuts off and I probably don't even hear anything to say. So building relationships is critical. Then what do you do to maintain them? A lot of us, and I used to be guilty of myself, and I'm gonna be totally transparent. We do a lot of work to get someone. And I'm gonna, I'm talking personal relationships now. We see somebody we like, we do all this stuff to get them interested, and then we are a couple and all of that, and then none of that stuff is still happening. We don't do any of that work to maintain that relationship. And I tell people all the time, you've changed the rules of engagement. If you know that the person's love language is, gift giving, and you've done that all this time, and then one day you like, well, I'm through with that. And you don't understand the rift, that's a problem. Mine is quality time. Because I'm busy, as most of you know, I have a lot of things going on with consulting and my companies and all. So if I designate time, that time is very important to me. And so if we schedule a date or something and you just don't show up, or even with my friends, like if we schedule something and then you just don't show up, that causes a personal issue for me. Now, these days, I'm very direct. And I will address it right then and not hold on to it. But there was a time that a lot of stuff that people were doing to me, and which I was allowing them to do, was building up and building up and building up. And this is why I'm such a proponent of mental health services. It was not until years of counseling that I realized what was happening and then what my part in that was. Every time a relationship goes awry, it is not necessarily the other person's fault. Yes, one person said, I stopped dating you when I get you. Exactly. That's not a healthy thing. If we really look at relationships that work, we see them enjoying the process the whole time. And that's important. I grew up with a 2-parent household. We were not in need. My parents worked. We did very well. There's some family lineage that helps and all of that. But I saw my parents, even in times when they were having disagreements, do things to keep their relationship stable and strong and active. And I think that's very important. Even when I developed friendships, and I have been bad over the years about reaching out to people. It's just, I get caught up in my own little world, and I don't reach out like I should, or I don't reach out like I could be. And I'm doing better. Sometimes it's just a text, like, how you doing? And those types of things. But I think in my mind, and I hope the people receiving it, value the fact that I'm taking the time to do that. It's not easy. At my core, I'm an introvert. People are always shocked by that because all of the stuff I do is so, external and extrovert. However, I'm an introvert, and so I have to work very hard to get to the point where I'm always out the limelight on. So I have to express that and communicate that to people who are in my lives. There are some times that you might invite me to something and I'm just mentally not in a place to be there. There used to be a time that I would feel really, really guilty and I would go anyway. And the whole time I was there, I would be miserable. Well, that's not healthy for me. And that poses problems to the people who are at the event. If you don't want to be there, that energy is noticeable. So as you're maintaining the relationships, make sure that you continue to communicate, even if it's in a professional setting. We don't have to be rude and disrespectful, but you should make sure that your ideas and thoughts are known, especially in situations where your supervisor or your colleagues are asking. I've always been the one that I want people around me that are better in the areas that are my weakest. I think that makes the whole team more effective. That makes all of us more productive. I own the company now. However, I often ask my staff their thoughts on what I want this decision to be, or the direction I'm leaning in. So you can't just build something and not maintain it. That's like, you build a house, this 15,000 square foot house, and then you never do any maintenance. Well, after a while, things are going to start breaking down and falling apart. And that's the same way in relationships. If you build it, even if you build on a solid foundation, but you don't do any consistent work to maintain it, then there are things that are going to start falling through the cracks, literally. And they could be little things. We don't, if you whether you have an apartment or a home, you try to clean as you can, most people don't cook and then just leave all the dirty dishes all over the sink, for the next 3 weeks. Or those of us that have homes, we don't let our lawns grow as tall as a house. Like, those maintenance things are the same in relationships. If you notice, for instance, you all used to go out a lot. Now all of a sudden you aren't. You all might want to discuss that if that's something that's important to you, and work that back in. What I have been guilty of over the time of my relationships, and I'm talking about personal relationships now, is not valuing my other half. I get into this point where, okay, well, they're here, they're going to be here, and I can just go on and, we'll figure this all out. And that has been detrimental. I did not take the quality time I needed to keep in communication with them. I did not do the things I needed to do so that they felt valued. I did not do the things that we started doing at the beginning that built this thing up. I start working, or I take on additional projects, and my priorities shift. And I have learned over the years that that is a challenge. That you have to continue doing the same work you did when you were building in order to maintain. So if I don't leave you with anything else today, it's this slogan that I have been wrestling with for weeks, and that is simply do the work and keep doing the work. Right. So next week, our topic is going to be a little adult. So it is not for children. It is going to be quite intense. I'm excited about it. I've been working on it for a couple of weeks. I am excited that we're here every Wednesday now. And again, remember, we are supporting and celebrating our seniors at HBCUs. Either you can donate to our senior box program on our website, theWoodsonFoundation.org, or you can email us profile information on a student that you would like us to profile over the next few weeks during our student profiles on all our social media. We are excited to watch the class of 2021 graduate. And I want us to actively and consciously make some efforts to change this issue with these killings across this country. Have a great week, have a great Wednesday, and make sure that we always continue to remove all barriers for us to have successful lives.